And today is the 114th Security Thought Leadership webinar. And we've been here every Tuesday and Thursday for well over a year now, examining some aspect of security and the context in which it operates. And one of the key things about today's topic is that we're going to be looking at this issue of cyber and physical. Now, that brings me a perfect gateway in just to briefly mention the cyber OSPAs are open. These are the categories available to enter from anywhere in the world. A worldwide cyber OSPA, exactly the same as the physical OSPA, same principles, but all those categories are available. Cyberospas.com, go and check it out and get your entries in as soon as you can. So that's my segue into the topic then, the CSO or the CISO, which is best placed in the corporate hierarchy. And those of you who've attended the first 113, and I know there are many of you, will know this has cropped up a few times. And there are arguments that both are well placed going forward and that neither are well placed going forward. And today, as usual, I've got three panelists from different parts of the world who will be going to give us their insights on this issue. So in a second, I'm going to introduce themselves. And once they've each introduced themselves, I will then invite them to make their opening statement. And once they've done that, I'll come to you, the audience, and invite you to get a question in. So please get your question in as soon as you can using the question answer button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll endeavour to incorporate it into the ensuing discussion. So without further ado then, let's go and meet our panel. And first of all, from the UK, let's go and meet Mike.
Thanks, Martin. Thank you for the invitation. So hello, everybody. I'm the past president of the ISACA Central UK chapter, and I'm still an active board member. I was also, I'm a past international board director of ISACA. I hold the CISM, the CRISC certifications. As for the day job, I'm director with Prism RA. We focus on technology, cyber, governance, risk and compliance, which obviously includes security. I'm also a non-exec director of CyberQ Group and a member of the Institute of Directors.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, Mike. So let's go over to Delhi and meet Inderjeet. Yeah. Can you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Martin, and really pleasure to be here today. And just to introduce myself, I'm Colonel Inderjeet. I have been into the Indian Army for 25 years, thereafter into the corporate ladder. And I'm the Chief Cybersecurity Officer for the Vara technology and also the DG Director General of the Cybersecurity Association of India. And all these years where, we've been looking after the physical security, guarding the country. Also, I was, working on your network security, your information security, your internet security, and now your data security. So that's the way, the transition I have seen for last 32 years now in my life. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Inderjeet. Appreciate that. And from Delhi, we go over to Wisconsin, where we'll find Dave Tyson. Dave, introduce yourself, please.
Good afternoon, Martin. Hello, everyone. Dave Tyson. I'm the president of Apollo Information Systems. It's a cybersecurity consulting firm in North America, primarily. I also am CEO of Cyber Easy Learning, which does training for physical security people in cyber. I'm a part of the Private Directors Association in a volunteer capacity to help educate board members on cybersecurity. And finally, past ASI as president from 2015. So thanks. Nice to be here.
Thank you very much, Dave, and you joined us from vacation over in Wisconsin. So thank you very much indeed. And all three of these panelists have influenced me in the development of the cyber OSPAs. Without further ado, then, let's go back to each of them and invite them to make their opening statement. 3 minutes where we get to hear their views on this topic matter. Mike, your opening statement, please.
Okay, thanks. The usual caveats, these are my personal views, not the views of ISACA or Prism. As we see the ever-increasing convergence of IT and OT operational technology, advent of smart offices, smart homes, etc. We've seen that convergence of OT and IT. So the cyber information security and physical security are becoming sort of equal terms. We need really, going forward, a combined multidisciplinary security team so we can address all these security issues. We all know that IT is delivered open, but at least within IT, we can configure security into our systems. When we look at operational technology, though, and the Internet of Things, quite often, security isn't there. So our challenge is even greater now, where we're seeing this convergence of IT and OT. Where we come across the pandemic now, yes, it's brought many, many new challenges. First one is around sort of risk management. We used to think, when we were considering risks, Well, that could never ever happen, could it? Well, guess what? It just has. So we're going to think wider of these events that could do us harm. Also, the pandemic, who would ever think that half the world would be working from home? So, our network endpoints now are in our people's homes, quite often using their home routers. So again, that security challenge has got even greater. So we need to consider, the CISO and CSO, well, where do they sit in the corporate structure? Have they got a direct reporting line to the board? Have they got the authority and the independence to make some key decisions to make certain that our organizations are well protected and safe, and we've reduced the cyber threat as much as we can, and we're doing all that we can to make the business resilience and also helping our businesses to achieve its goals and its objectives, but in a secure and safe environment. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you very much indeed. Excellent. Well, some great points there, and plenty of stuff for us to come back on. Don't forget, audience, if you'd like to get your question in early, use the question and answer button at the bottom of the screen, and we'll endeavour to incorporate it once we've heard from the three panelists. So let's go over to Delhi then, and Inderjeet, your opening statement, please, your thoughts on this topic.
Sure. Well, thanks again, Martin. And, I'll start with one of the anecdotes which are there, that if you lose your identity card, so who's responsible for the security of it? Whether it's a CISO or a CSO. So that's really a point to ponder. And that's why the CISO and the CSO are comparable. And while we say that, the CISO who's in charge of the data, right? And he's responsible for anything which is happening to the networks and has to take care of it. Whereas a CSO, he's responsible for the corporate security part of it. And while we are talking of this kind of arrangement, and we are thinking that the CISOs and the CISOs are comparable, there's definitely a certain difference between both of them, right? And CISOs are liable for tracking and assessing the risks that the firm can face, right? Like what we are seeing today, all the ransomware attacks which are being, so rampant every day. The CISOs are really very much responsible for that. The physical security, the technical solidity of the company becomes the role of the CSO. Now, with the transition or the paradigm shift of the technology, what we are seeing now, there's so much of technology which is going to come in the lap of the CSOs, where they really need to upgrade themselves into their technology sets. Just to give you the technology part of it, the facial recognition, right? And that's where the CSOs have to train their people. They need to really work on as to how it has to happen. Access control is their part. They've already been doing it for so many years now. Then the voice biometric, right? So these are the technology sets, they really need to upgrade. While the data which is flowing inside becomes the responsibility of the CISOs, but the usage is of the CSO. So there's going to be a real blurry line, right? And at the same time, the reporting of the CISOs and the CSOs have to be taken care of, because right now there's different channels of reporting to the CEOs, and how they do it. Maybe the CISO goes to the CIO or directly to the CEO, and the CSO directly reports to the CEO. So those kind of things are really a point to ponder. And it's a very interesting topic to discuss. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, we may well come back to that, Inderjeet. I'm sure we will, in fact. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Don't forget, question answer button at the bottom of your screen for questions. I'll come to you as soon as we've heard from our third panelist. We'll go over to Wisconsin and we'll ask Dave your opening statement, please, Dave.
Thanks, Martin. Well, maybe I'll just start by pulling the pin on the grenade early then, and start with this. I would liken the current position of where we are in this debate to, the world is once again flat, because you've got this silly argument, in my opinion, on what the heck the person should be called and where they should be reporting, instead of the actual point of the exercise, which is securing the organization. And, when you start to look at the realities of what we face in this industry, one, the amount of money you spend on security has very little relation to the level of security that you actually receive. You still have to do it well. And the amount of money someone else spends that you benchmark again will not indicate any kind of level of risk that you face in this technical world, because the amount of new technology you adopt, whether it be the IoT or anything else, will define your risk environment. Next, we talk about reporting to the board. Well, the overwhelming results are that the board doesn't know how to govern cyber. And so we've got a problem there, right? We're reporting to folks who don't really know how to tell us what they need. And all of the surveys, including the recent World Economic Forum one, bear this out. And I think there's some other challenges. The physical world was used to doing, formal risk assessments, even the cyber world to a certain extent, once a year or something like that. But, quantitative analysis of how much risk is one threat really doesn't serve much of a purpose in a world where you have to make decisions on a daily basis or several times a day against the threats that face you. So I think that this is creating a paradox. You've got security technologies, whether they be physical or cyber, that's duplicated, that companies are paying twice for, and twice for teams that are poorly, for the most part, secured themselves. My penetration testing teams, their number 2 target today to get into companies is physical security systems, because they are so poorly secured, is a general rule. Now, that's not the fault of any one person or any one group. It's just a reality of where we are in this world, of the complications of all these technologies. So getting back to this idea of the CISO and the CSO, I think that there's a lot of road we need to travel about what's the outcome we're seeking. And that's hard for me to swallow, given I wrote the Security Convergence book in 2007. But I will say that I think that there's lots more to talk here.
Dave, thank you very much indeed, and very, very interesting. Excellent. Well, look, so much we can pick on there. Let me go start the conversation, though, with something that overlaps what each of you said in different ways. And it's from Rachel Lawyer, who's, of course, written a book about bringing convergence in its different forms. And the question she's got is, we're discussing these webinars, the business acumen of security leaders. This has cropped up a number of times. Do the panelists feel the CISOs have a better handle on the business discussion than CSOs? And Mike, I'll come to you first. Is there something about the cyber conversation that lends itself to the business discussion? So Mike, we've had this conversation in previous webinars, that it's really about business acumen, less about security knowledge. One, do you agree that's true? And two, are CISOs better placed for that? And then I'll come to you, Inderjeet, after that. Mike.
Okay. Not coming on to really the CISO or the CSO, security as a general, we need to understand the business. We are there to help the business achieve its objectives and its goals. So we have got to start speaking the language that the C-suite can understand. We need to put some of these issues into terms that they can clearly understand. The C-suite have also got their role to play. Now they've got to start getting a bit more savvy around the cyber threat. But we, as security professionals, we have got to help coach and mentor them in that way. The bit around sort of the risk management piece, it's really understanding, what is going to do us most harm, and are we doing the right things to protect it? We can't, put 100% security in place. Where do we need to focus our attention? So that's where the sort of risk management piece comes in. But we've got to articulate, what is important for the business to get the C-suite on board to put the investments in the right areas that we need to protect our business.
Mike, very quickly, amongst your peer group, amongst CISOs that the broader world that to what extent would you say that en masse, as a group, they are able to speak the language of business, to use your words?
Yeah, again, in all population, there are some that can do this really well. There's some that do it really, really badly. And a lot of people hide behind, technical terms. We have got to put it into context. But back
thanks, Mike. I'm going to come back to you. I was thinking, just move to Inderjeet now. I would like to ask you the same question. So Michelle's question is about the business acumen of security leaders. Do you think there is a gap there? And do you think that's particularly acute either for CISOs or CSOs? Inderjeet.
So, yeah, what is happening, the ground reality is that CISO, they are not given the right kind of place in the board, the right kind of hearing to their, things which are there. And that's why there is a gap, and they're not being given the right kind of business to show their business acumen altogether. Because CISOs generally are being placed on the CIOs most of the time, and only very few time they are directly reporting to the CEOs, right? Whereas you have the CSOs reporting directly to the CEO, right? So the business acumen side is lagging, number one, not lagging from the personality point of view, from the hierarchical point of view, right? So that's very important. It's not the acumen of any individual. He may be the best business acumen of the CISO. So that's one point which we need to really consider that way. And as we all know, the cybersecurity is the last priority today. Of course, barring the last 1 year, the things are started changing. It's been always on the priority list number last for the discussion. Same way as the budgets which are there, right? So those kind of things are a problem right now, which we are likely to see the changes. And courtesy the ransomware attacks which have been happening for the last 1 year, there's a lot of thought process which is changing amongst the people. So we need to look at from that perspective itself.
Okay. Dave, let me come to you. And of course, as you say, you've written around this subject in different ways. Dave, you're this point about business acumen, right? Okay. So if you're not going to start whether CISO or CSO is important, can you start with a business sense on this? Maybe that's the starting point, is it?
Absolutely, Martin. But I think it's more than just that. I think that to the point of the other speakers, I think, there's a lot of conversation about what does business acumen even mean? What I call it is business results, right? Because you have to know how the value for the company is actually created, and you need to aid in that process. It doesn't matter. I mean, there's pluses or minuses to who you report to, right? I've seen both models, but here, let me give you a simple example. If you create real value, as in one of my positions, we had 12 million truck stops a year at customers' homes. And part of the, 50% of that time was wasted waiting for the security parts so they could communicate. We eliminated that. So we cut 50% of the time out of 12 million truck rolls a year. I got all the money I ever wanted from that company. There was no question about budget. It was about creating value. And what I call this is ruthless focus on the business. If you are ruthlessly engaged in making the business succeed through security, whether it be stuff going out the back door through the warehouse or the e-commerce platform, it doesn't matter. If you are seen by leadership as contributing to the business success, you will always report to the right place, and you will always have the budget you need. So short answer, not enough business acumen out there, but it's not about just going out and getting an MBA. You have to know how to apply this.
But the question is, I suppose, Dave, in follow-up, I mean, when you speak, it sounds very logical. I suppose the problem comes, the very structures that you spoke about, that you do have different entities, that in itself makes a holistic approach very difficult to come by. I mean, what's the barrier to bringing these together? It sounds obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds really obvious, but let me a question kind of to your answer or to your question, which is, how does a CISO and a CSO go in and talk to the CFO who's only got $1 million to spend, and they both need $1 million? What's the language they're going to use to debate which one is the highest risk to the organization? There has to be a common holistic approach to understanding the business and what's going to impact the crown jewels of the business the most if they have to make risk and investment trade-off. It's about the impacts and the results to the business, not anything else. And the pandemic has shown us that completely.
And let me just come back to you, Mike. I mean, Mike, would you say that is the approach that is being advocated in business, or is it some sort of nice ideal that it just isn't how it is most of the time? Mike?
I think the sort of the go-ahead CISO/CSO is exactly what Dave has said. If you can deliver business value, you're going to get all the budget that you need, because you're seeing that security is adding value to the business, not taking value out of the business. Yes, there's a cost of doing this. You know, there may be a bigger cost of not doing it. But really, is you know, can we make the business better? Can they achieve their business goals and their business objectives through good, effective security, where we can deliver value? And I think the trick is, though, is how do we present that to that board? You know, how do we demonstrate that we are actually delivering value? And we can debate a lot on sort of metrics and whatever that you've gone up to the board. But we need to, again, going back to that language, put into the language that the C-suite understand. If you can demonstrate you are delivering value for every dollar they're spending on security, we're actually getting a couple of dollars back into the business. If you can demonstrate that, you'll get all the budget you need.
Inderjeet, just a quick brief follow-up to you, very briefly, if I might. To what extent would you say, just amongst your peer group, the ones that you're aware of, that they are adept at speaking the language of business in the way that Mike and Dave have described it? Would you say this is common, or would you say it was an exception?
So see, it's like this. It's growing. It's changing. I'll say it's not. I agree with them because there's a different mindset in India, and that's the way it is. The people are really moving to these kind of things. And I'll just tell you one thing. I warned some of the companies of the cyber attacks, right? Before it happened, they denied it. So where do you look in for the priority for the cybersecurity, right? So primarily there is a change. There's a subtle difference which is coming up, and after the call, we saw people really looking in for the business continuity, the risk management from the cyber perspective, BYOD securities and all, the VPNs coming in. So things are changing, but there's definitely a difference between what Dave brought out and what Mike is bringing it, and what the ground reality we are seeing it here. So it's like something which has to be done in due course of time.
Okay, let me get a come. Thank you very much indeed. Let me come to you first, Dave, on this question. Something that you and I spoke about before, Dave, many years ago. Michael Gibbs has said the budget is going to the CISO, somewhat disagreeing with what's been said. And cyber is a board level issue. Somewhat disagreed by some of you said. Physical security rarely is. Doesn't this mean the CISO is better positioned? Well, surely, Dave, of course it does, if that's true.
Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely on the surface, that's the case. But the reality is, and this has been proven out for years of studies, that the risks have already converged. The threats work across, they don't care what your security, what you call your security people. If when they started dropping USB sticks in the parking lot so people could put them into their computer, they converged that day. So it doesn't really matter at the end of the day who gets the budget. It's what you spend it on and your credibility with the executives to get it in the first place. The problem is we go into a CFO today and he says, well, I'm spending $1 million on a SOC for the physical and $1 million for a SOC on the cyber. I'm spending $1 million for identity and access for cyber and $1 million for identity access on physical. Why the hell am I doing this? Where's the value? And there's gaps in between. So that's the convergence argument, which holds pretty well, I think. But at the end of the day, it comes back to what's the security you're delivering, and what's the value the company's going to get from it. That's the argument that matters.
Well, I suppose it does, Dave, but it also matters about how an organization makes a decision if it's not very well informed about the issues. And I guess the point is that I can't see any business leader voting for their own abandonment. I mean, surely they're each going to defend their position. I'm just wondering how you get to a position when you've got each arguing their case probably well, as to as an organization, how do you step over that? Because organizations aren't good at knowing about security.
Well, very true. And I think we've made an argument that makes security sound like insurance for many, many years. The reality is that every company that I've gone into in my 20 years as a CISO didn't understand their real risk position the day I got there. They didn't have the advanced technologies to understand it. They didn't know the threats. There was literally command and control, like hackers working on their network, and they didn't understand it. So every decision they made was a suboptimal risk decision and spend decision, because they didn't even have an integrated program to understand it. If somebody's badging in from one door and they're connected by VPN to another country, that's a problem. And you got to be able to see both to understand the context of the problem.
Well, okay. I mean, Mike, let me come to you. Do you see any sense in which organizations are being able to see both? I mean, my sense is that you know, from listening to these webinars, is that there's still two very distinct worlds here. And indeed, you know, one of the reasons why we've got the cyber OSPAs is because they're supported by a completely different set of associations, by a completely different set of expertise, by a completely different set of guidance and policies. I mean, you know, you can say there's convergence if you like, but the truth of the matter is there's still very separate worlds of knowledge and action, which makes it very difficult to bring together. Mike?
Yeah, yes, it does. But we've got to, I think we've got to, where the position we are at the moment, we are going to start converging that together in our own minds and presenting that to the board to get them on board. If we're not joined up ourselves and we understand what we are trying to protect, we got no chance of selling that to the board and getting their support and their buy-in. Yeah, we got some, you know, who's the successful companies nowadays? Now, really, they are technology companies. You know, you're looking at Amazon isn't a retailer, you know, it's a technology company. Airbnb isn't a hotel organization, it's a technology company. They are getting this right. However, at the moment, they are a small minority in our companies. The older companies, the more traditional companies, are going to start coming away to this way of thinking as well. If they don't, you know, they're going to disappear from the, you know, if you look in global industry, you know, if you look at household names like Kodak and the like, you know, they've disappeared because they haven't kept up with technology and that divergence. And some of that is also, you know, making certain we are protecting our businesses. So, you know, we have got to be much more better, as I said, you know, joining up internally ourselves, so we can then present a compelling proposition to the board to get that investment. And as you know, Dave said, you know, if we can really articulate we are adding value to the business, we're going to get as much investment as we need.
All right. I mean, Inderjeet, let me just bring you back to Michael Gibbs' question. Is it true that CISOs have more control of the budget? Because it strikes me that's a pretty powerful position to be in. Is that generally true from your experience in India amongst the men and women? That,
they are in control of the budget because they know what they want to buy, what they want to procure, and how to secure the network. So their budgets are very much specific for their requirements, right? And when it comes to the CISOs, CSOs, you know, it's a separate ball game altogether. So though it's the same coin, but they're the two sides of the coin. So we cannot say in the same breath that, you know, CISOs and the CISOs, the budget wise, they are same. So it's going to be different. So that's how it's going to be all together.
All right. Okay. Let me come to Mike and then Dave on this one. And I'm going to move a little bit fast now because time's going on and we've got some good questions here. So Mike first, then Dave second. James Willison, who perhaps both of you will know, is very famous in security circles on this topic. We have campaigned for cross-functional security teaming for many years, but this seems to be rare. If we could build these teams to leverage the converged technologies, could we get better at risk management than we are? And another idea, Mike, when I hear James ask that question, that sounds damn obvious.
It is. I think somebody asked me the other day, somebody who's worked with me for many, many years, saying, why do companies pay us, you know, quite high daily rates to tell them the blindly obvious things, you know, the common sense things? And I said, well, yes, it may be common sense to us, but it's not common sense to our clients. And that's what we got to, you know, really bring out, is, you know, bringing that common sense, those things that we've seen, you know, that's gone wrong in other organisations into the field. And I say to my clients and I say to my kids, you know, in life you're going to make mistakes. The important thing though is learning from that experience, but even better, learn from somebody else's experience. So, you know, what's happening out there, you know, can we bring that, you know, can we start protecting ourselves before it happens to us?
Okay, I mean, Dave, let me ask you this question. That sounds obvious, James Williams' questions. We have converged teams and we build it up from there. I mean, in fact, that would address many of the issues you've raised, but it's not common practice. So what's the problem here, Dave?
Courage. Courage to learn, courage to try something new, courage to embrace technologies, courage to step out of your comfort zone and deal with something across the aisle. At the end of the day, there are technologies out there that can protect your environment if you are willing to learn. There are, even in the physical security space, there's low levels of adoption of highly cyber-based technologies that run cameras. You don't even need to put half the original technology that you need, like in the buildings nowadays. You can run it all virtually. I mean, this stuff's out there. Embracing it doesn't mean you have to give up your sovereignty over what department you're in, right? It's about embracing the technology, whether it's identity and access cameras or anything else. Because if you leave it open and it gets hacked, at the end of the day, you're going to be the one on the hook. And people are afraid to embrace this problem. They want to call it, that's IT. Just go into ask any CSO, who's responsible for the protection of your physical security systems, and watch what the answers you get. Oh, it's got to be IT. It's got to be cybersecurity. But at the end of the day, they're responsible. I said 5 years ago, if you don't understand the enterprise risk, you don't have to be a techie, you don't have to be an expert, but if you don't understand it, you really risk being, relegated to a tactical role and out of the boardroom. Because the board doesn't want to hear about one little technology or another. They want to hear about the overall risk position. And that's why, more than not, CISOs get in the boardroom.
Yeah, okay, interesting. I mean, Inderjeet, let me just come to you on this, because I've got a sort of follow-up question, a related question from Rajmeet Singh. And the question is on this issue of the teams working together, which James Willison has raised. Is, of course, we've got data center operational systems, or the GSOCs, various ways in which teams do come together. And I wonder whether these point to examples of good practice. And if they do, what's the barrier to implementing them? Is it just about lack of courage, as Dave has suggested? Just about. Is it primarily about lack of courage?
So primarily, it's a skill set what is required. So for everything, for example, for the data center security systems, operational systems, you require a particular skill set. And if, for example, a CISO who's there and he's working in a data center for a couple of years, say 1 year, and he shifts from that and goes to another, company, and there he gets into a different role, maybe a bank or something as a CISO. Now, what skill set do I require to give him there? So I cannot be skilling, or that CISO doesn't have to keep skilling himself, right, for different jobs, what he's going to do, because any CISO who's there will be changing job at an average 3 years, 5 years. I don't, see them staying for long. So what skill sets are they going to be using? So it's not going to be like that I need to teach them everything and they should know everything. And that is why the CSOs who are very specific to the requirement, because they have been trained on those skill sets, right? They are trained for those kind of jobs. A CISO may not have the capabilities for securing the physical infrastructure. We have to understand the physical infrastructure security mindsets are totally different than the data security, what we are doing. So while my co-panelists, I agree with them in some point of time, because they need to be, trained, they need to move ahead. But the ground reality is CISOs are different. The CSOs are going to be a different skill sets, and bringing them together on a same platform may sound good. It's a very interesting. And because I have done both the hats, I was in military, I was doing the physical security, while at the same time, I was into the network security part of it, all of these 25 years. So I know where the difference lies, on the skilling part of it. And when we're talking the corporate, where we are facing this kind of challenge.
Okay, Dave, just to come back briefly, because you came in on this. Inderjeet's point is, okay, but they are different beasts. there are different skill set, different cultures, different angles to this. It's not just a matter of putting in a team and thinking it's going to be okay.
I understand it. And I respect that position completely. But remember, I started as a security guard, right? Then I pulled alarm wires, right? The thought that you can't learn this is a fallacy that has been created. Now, we're not talking about people's willingness to learn it and finding the sources. He's absolutely right. The skills can be different, but the imperative here is about protecting the business. And if you really want to be taken seriously, we talk about the board, but if you can't have this conversation about the entire picture, and it doesn't mean you can't have two people working together, but you got to understand each other. We have a common language, and it's risk. We have to learn how to communicate across those things. So I believe you can learn new skills. It's just your willingness to do so. Because the reality is that if you get hacked through your system or the CISO gets hacked through his system, it doesn't matter. You're still hacked, right? You can't just secure the pieces you want. And you understand your job as a security leader is to protect the entire organization.
Okay. Let me come to my next question for you. It's from Glenn Kitteringham, who's a former panelist. And this is his question, Mike. He says, is there an inherent flaw in CISOs managing risk in any meaningful way, given that IT people as a whole are very comfortable with risk in everything they do? The entire tech industry is extremely risky. And while it has benefited society a tremendous amount, it's increased our overall risk more than anything else. Well, there's a point of view. But let me ask you to comment on it and get your thoughts for Glenn.
Okay, so yeah, interesting question. I would sort of counter that. I don't think that IT people necessarily have understood that risk. They may understand the technology part of it, but they do not understand the business risk. Back in a past life, I led KPMG's Midlands InfoSec team, and my favourite red pen on reports was "so what." So a firewall rule has been set. So what? How am I going to explain that to the chief finance officer to make him to do something? So we have got to understand, yes, the technology components of risk, but put that into a business context, because it's the business we are trying to protect.
Okay, fair enough. Dave, you're nodding in agreement with that.
Well, yes, I agree 100%. Mike's right that IT people are maybe not the best risk managers in the world. Their job is to get functionality up. Most companies now are technology companies. My experience has been IT people don't consider the risk or don't prioritize the risk very well. And I do that by 20 years of banging on project managers to actually build the stuff secure before they put it in. So risk doesn't, in my experience, does not really appear very well in IT. It's the IT security team. And I've said this for years, even to the physical security leaders. You know more about risk and security than any IT person. If you just ask the question, if you can ask why, how secure is the fence and how do you know, you can ask the same thing about the firewall. It's just a perimeter filtering device. Who gets to come in? Who decides who gets to come in? How do you know if there's a problem? Those questions are the same for the firewall as they are for the fence. The IT team doesn't understand that. They don't understand tools and tradecraft of bad guys. They don't know that. So leaving the IT team to do any kind of risk management is unwise. Not that they're not good people and trying hard, but they have a lot of other priorities. And that's the debate that rages inside of IT.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, let's go to a final question, I think. And the question is about training. I wonder whether I could just turn this question on its head, Inderjeet, slightly first. I mean, thinking of the future security leaders, is it easy to say they're going to need a bit of physical, they're going to need a bit of cyber, and they're going to need a bit of business nous? And that's what it's going to be. If I could ask you to be brief, Inderjeet, because I'd like to get Mike and Dave on this issue as well.
So I'll be brief. So, like I told you that for the cyber, you need to have a specific skill set, maybe CISA, CISP, what you're doing. Okay. And for the physical part of it, there are lots of courses of CPP, SS and all, which you need to do. And that's where you need to understand what the requirements for a particular job is.
But is it one or the other, Inderjeet, or is it a bit of both? That's what I'm trying to get to. I mean,
so the point which I'm trying to say is, you may try to do both, but it's a very difficult proposition. And at one point where somebody was telling that we had a cross-functional team, but it's very rare. The reason is I'll just give you an example.
Be very quick, Inderjeet, you're running out of time, please.
Yeah, one example. And it's a point to ponder. You're running a data center and you have a ransomware attack. And at the same time, you have a fire hazard. Now, what's the priority of a CISO, whether it's the physical security or the network security? So that's where I will leave it as a thought process for everyone. What's the priority you need to take it on?
All right. Okay. Mike, is it one or the other or both? And is business acumen more important?
Okay. Obviously, I would say you need to be a CISO and a CISO, but apart from that, it's got to be a mix. You've got to be many things. You wear many hats. First of all, yes, you got to understand the business. You got to understand the technology. You got to know how to conduct a proper, effective risk assessment. Once you've understood what you are trying to protect through that risk assessment, what's important for the business, then you're halfway there. But it's got to be that blend. You've got to understand the technology piece and the business piece.
Okay. Dave, is it a matter of forget what they say? It's all about business now?
No, that's not. No, I wouldn't say that at all. I think a good mixture of the skills is important. I think the kids of today that are born digital have a natural relationship with technology. The physical security side, I mean, they need a healthy set of paranoia. There's no question. And the challenge is they have to develop the people skills, the human interaction skills, I think are critical. But yeah, at the end of the day, if you can't talk to the business, you're dead. You will be in the tactical and operational roles your entire career. And this ruthless focus on the business, understanding the crown jewels and how your company makes value and how you can aid in that. And sometimes that's not easy, but yeah, it's going to be a balance, Martin, and it's going to be one of those things that again, the world's changing, and if your company is taking Bitcoin now, cash is irrelevant, right? So again, the world is changing. You got to go with it.
Okay, and finally, Dave, just in terms of the future leaders, I mean, do you see that being a combination of both sets of skills? Do you see them coming together anytime soon? Very quickly, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah,
I think it's happening, but it's slow, and it's going to take another, probably, it may not be in my lifetime, I don't know, but absolutely the table stakes are still there, integrity and thought leadership and all those other kinds of things. But at the end of the day, it's going to take courage to try something different. And no matter what side you're on, you're going to have to speak to the other side's topics.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your insights. That was a fantastic discussion. We could have gone on, and I'm sure we're going to pick up on this in future webinars. I'm very interested. Very many issues there, and I'll try and organise something for the future, building on what our three panelists have said. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you, audience, for the questions. Really, really good discussion, and I see good discussion on chat as well. Very finally, then, just a few final comments. Just to let you know, we've got a major study on security officers. We're encouraging security officers to take part in the survey. We want their views. So if you could encourage any security officer to complete our survey, if they're operating in one of those countries, India, UK and US included, we'd be very, very grateful. Next thing to say is that we've got OSPA nominations open in Kenya, Romania, Benelux and the United States. Do get your entries in soon, as the cyber OSPAs as well. And TECAS nominations are open in the UK. And while we mentioned cyber OSPAs, all these associations are currently involved. We're adding more by the day. If you know a cyber association not involved with the worldwide cyber OSPAs, then please let us know. It's a worldwide initiative and attracting a lot of attention around the world. Christine Brooks is spending her time on this at the moment. And finally, to say that we go through it all again on Tuesday. Listen to this. On Tuesday, we've got two victims speaking to us. A man who was duped into parting with a lot of money by a fraudster, and his wife advised him not to do it, and she's going to be on the webinar as well. Can you imagine the flames on that one? We've also got a government official explaining what they're doing. So join us on Tuesday to find out what it's like to be duped by a fraudster. And next week, we've also on Thursday got a webinar on counterfeiting and what we're going to do about it. So thank you very much indeed once again to the audience. Thank you very much indeed once again to the panelists. Fantastic discussion. Don't forget, a copy of this webinar and a blog about what they've been saying will be available on the website tomorrow. I hope to see you on Tuesday with the story about those victims. And wherever you are in the world, until we see you again, stay safe.